Hi everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids, and in today's video, let's talk about 10x. Let's talk about 10x events. Is it actually a good way to get a champion? What are the actual chances? Is it a scam? Does it exploit players? All the rest of that stuff. We're going to talk about that today. And I'm actually, I'm a little bit surprised to make the video. I think certainly we're going to be diving into the actual specific stats, and that is kind of interesting, to see the very specific bits of it. But I've definitely been surprised because I've seen other videos like this before, and I'm always shocked by how engaged people are in the comments and that they had no idea about this sort of thing. Whereas I think a lot of it is fairly obvious when we break it down. So to show you why I think it's fairly obvious, I'll give you a heuristic method to look at this. So like a rule of thumb, right? So we're going to look at this in a way that just sort of simplifies it so it's not fully accurate. I'll show you the properly accurate stats after. But that just, it's just a quick way to look at it, work it out, and make a good decision, right? So the way I'd look at it is this, right? So let's say normally we've got a 0.5% chance to summon from an ancient shard to hit a legendary. For the sake of the comparison here, for just the heuristic method, let's imagine that it's a 2 times event that also overlaps with the 10 times, and then we can change it to a non 2 times after, just because it makes it simple. So let's say hypothetically we have a 1% chance to get a legendary from an ancient shard. We got this 10 times ancients today, so 1% chance from an ancient shard. What are the chances that we get one of these legendaries? Again, let's simplify it down. Let's imagine that there are 100 legendaries that you could potentially summon from a sacred shard. There's 100. If we, pull in a non 10 times event, then there's a 1 in 100 chance that we would get that champion. And then if we keep a 10 times event simple and we say there's, instead of a 1 in 100, a 1% chance, let's say there's simply a 10 in 100, a 10% chance to get that legendary. And I mean, there you go. People will say, I pulled my shards during a 10 times event and I didn't get the champion that was boosted 10 times. Well, yeah, I mean, if you bear in mind just that basic analysis there, very simple, right? If you have a 1 in 100 chance of getting a legendary in normal times, and you've got a 10 in 100, a 10% chance of getting it in a 10 times event, then obviously you've got a 10% chance if you pull a legendary to get that champion. There's a 90% chance if you pull a legendary that you wouldn't get the 10 times champion, which is, that's a lot higher. And then if we again go back to what I was saying, if we imagine it's a 2 times event with a 10 times champion as well, so you got a 1% chance per shard, and if you've got a 10% chance if you do hit a legendary, well, what that means is that you would have to pull a lot of shards to actually get it done, right? You would have to you'd have to hit legendary about 10 times on average to get that champion, and you'd have to pull 100 shards every time for a legendary. So you're looking at 1,000 shards. You're looking at 1,000 shards in a 2 times single champion 10 times event using this broad method to get a legendary. 1,000 shards. And by the way, if we knock that down to only the 0.5, if we say it's not a 2 times, it's just a single champion 10 times with this basic simple method, you'd be looking at 2,000 shards on average to actually successfully pull that champion. 2,000. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. But again, I just find it really baffling when people be like, I hit a legendary and I got Rashguard the Tower. I can't believe I got him and not the 10 times champion. Again, bear in mind the 10%, 90%. Now, when we actually dive into more in-depth, blindingly white spreadsheet coming in, because let's actually break it down, because this isn't actually how it works. It's actually more complicated than that. So what they actually do, what Plarium actually does, as far as we know, as far as I'm aware, is that they don't increase your chance to get the champion by 10, but instead they add a total of 10 copies of that champion to the summoning pool. So someone left a comment. Actually, let me pause the video. Let me try find the comment, and I'll give them full credit here. Let me find it. Okay, I actually got it. So it was Rhyme. A user called Rhyme left a comment. I'm not going to put the comment up on the screen right now because it would spoil what I'm going to be showing here. But I just want to give a shout out to them. They posted the comment with the accurate stuff. But they went through it, and they worked out that there's 122 champions you could pull from sacred or ancient shards. Again, I didn't actually back check this number, but I think it's probably correct, or certainly it's going to be close enough. If it's slightly wrong, you can obviously adjust the maths. I don't know if they included Like, so for example, I don't know if they included champs like Syl of the Drakes and stuff like that. That I believe you can pull Syl from. No, you can pull Syl from this. There's some champions that you can pull from ancient shards, but you can't pull from sacred. Yeah, so for example, Syl of the Drakes, you cannot pull her from sacreds, but you could pull her from ancients. So it does mean that the legendary pool for ancients is slightly bigger than sacreds. And there's a couple of other examples too, but. We'll go with this number. So about 122, we think, is the number of legendaries. So what we think Plarium actually does is that they come into it, and for a 10 times event, they would actually simply add 9 copies of the champion. So let's say Rotos, okay? Let's say we've got a 10 times event for Rotos. They would put in 9 additional copies of Rotos into the champion pool so that there are 10 total copies. So in other words, there's 10 times as many Rotos in as there usually are, because 10 by 1 is 10. So there's 10 times more Rotos, but it doesn't actually quite make it 10% as likely. So if we look at the actual numbers here, so we'd say the number, including the 10x champion, so there'd be 9 additional, so we'd have 131 potential champions that you could pull, right? There's 131 potential things, 10 of which are Rotos, which would give you a 7.6% chance to pull Rotos, right? That would be your normal thing. Now, if we were to imagine a non-10x event, which is we'd have 122, and you would have, 122 potential champions, your chance would be 0.82%. Would be your, sorry, I mistyped there. It should be 0.82. 0.82%. So as you can see, it's actually not 10 times as likely on the user end at all, right? If it was 10 times as likely, you'd have an 8.2% chance, but you don't. You've got a 7.6 because of how they do it. So yeah, that bit is definitely sneaky. That is definitely deceptive for sure. And although it is a relatively small number and you're massively unlikely to get them anyway, it's still like these small changes. Let me zoom this in a bit as well. It's these small changes, though, that can actually make a big difference. I think one great example is I've never played roulette, but I was watching a video. I think it was Wired had a video of like a statistician answering common questions and stuff. People are asking about roulette. And I think one of the games you can play on roulette, on the roulette wheel, there's a roulette wheel. It's got 100 different slices on it, and half are white, half are black. Except there's also 2 of the slices are red. You got these 2 special red slices, and people can bet on black or white. So you can say, I put money that it's going to be black. Well, of course, if there's 100 slices and we've got half are black, half are white, but we've taken away 2, that means there's 2 that are red, 49 are black, 49 are white. So, of course, when you bet on white, there's a 49% chance that you win. There's a 51% chance that you lose and that the house wins, right? So it's even these small differences can actually translate into, over large quantities, into pretty big swings. And it's somewhat substantial. Now, if we look at this, I'm sure you're asking, what about this 10 times event, though, today? What about this one, right? Where we've got 3 champions. Let's look at it. So this is exactly how it work out. So we would have 122 potential legendaries, but now we include the 10 times, right? So we'd be adding 9 extra duchesses into the if you imagine it like a deck of cards, 9 more Duchess cards, so we've got 10 Duchess cards total. 9 more Rotos as well, 9 more Kaimars. What do we get? We would be coming out with, there'd be now 149 potential cards that you can pull, potential champions. Now your chance then to pull all of those, the chance to pull one that is one of these 10 times champions, is actually a 20.10% chance. There's a 20% chance when you pull a legendary during this event that it will be one of these. And of course, that means that there's approximately an 80% chance that it would not be one of these. And if you're looking for a specific one, let's say, well, I specifically want Duchess. I don't care about the others. I specifically want Duchess, for example. You would have a 6.7% chance, right? So if you're looking for only one of the 10 times boosted champion, because they've increased the summoning pool, basically you're worse off compared to a single 10 times champion event. You're slightly worse off. However, you are better off if you're happy getting 2 or 3 of these than your typical 10 times event. Before I talk about void shards and all of that, let me remind you, if you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe, all the rest. But even more importantly, let's talk about this. At this point, now we see these numbers before us. Are these 10 times events good to summon in? Are these positive? Are these a good thing? And again, my opinion is the same as it's always been here on the channel. Obviously, I've got a more specific opinion I can give now that I've actually broken down the numbers and the stats specifically. Before, I was really just going off that heuristic method I was talking about at the start. And my opinion, it's still the same. It is still the same, which is these 10 times events, it's your best way to get that specific champion out of a guaranteed legendary event. So there is that, but it is a absolutely massive gamble that in almost all cases is not worth it. My advice is the same as it's always been, which is if you have been tracking your mercy system, so you've, for example, with ancient shards, you're over 200 summons without a legendary. I'd say at that point, it does become worth the gamble, right? Because at that point you go, okay, let's say just a typical 10 times event, there's a 7.6% chance, let's say for a Duchess. Well, Duchess is absolutely incredible, you know, for the cost of, let's say, 20 ancient shards, to have a boosted chance, even if it's only a tiny chance to get that Duchess, it's actually worth the gamble. But it is definitively a gamble. It is extremely, extremely a gamble. And again, I haven't sat down and typed up the stuff, and I'm not going to bother, for what if this idea of a 20 times chance, right? You often hear, I've heard a lot of people, it's very common, they say 10 times isn't good enough, increase it to a 20 times chance. Well, I can tell you, let's actually work it out right now. So we'd have 122. For 20 times, we'd add on another 10. So there'd be 19 additional versions. So we'd have, 141. So if we take that chance then, so we'd have, 20, very simple, 20 divided by 141. Let's get the actual thing. You would go up to a 14.2% chance, rounding stuff up slightly. 14.2% chance if there is a 20 times. Now, again, in my opinion, does this make it a good thing? No, not really. I mean, it would be better. It's obviously way better for us as the user, but it is still nonetheless an insane gamble. It's still a huge gamble, and almost 86% of the time, you're not going to get the champion that you want. So from like that end user perspective, I actually think even a 20 times event is still pretty terrible in terms of like your actual end user experience, in terms of your chances to get the champion. It's still pretty bad. It's gambling, right? It's gambling. Now, gambling can be fun sometimes, but you need to go into it with the correct expectations. And certainly where this gets exploitative is that people, like if they upped it to a 20 times chance, how many people would go, wow, it's now 20 times, not a 10 times. This is amazing. This is so exciting. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And of course, you could end up spending lots of money that you really probably shouldn't. So it really depends it depends on the user. But I think gambling, just generally speaking, of course, is inherently exploitative. And it's important to be, as a consumer, as a user, it's obviously something that can be used well. It can be enjoyable. It can be fun. But you have to be an informed user to make it. And it's important to protect vulnerable parts of society as well, like, children especially. Be careful if your kids play this game. Very dangerous. Anyway, let's look at voids now, right? Let's look at voids. Straightforward enough, because we're going to have a 10 times voids tomorrow. No, on Sunday. Let me just double check this, just to give you an example. Yeah, so tomorrow we've got sacreds. So pretty much your chances for sacreds, like I said, there's a couple. The pool is haven't worked out the exact stats here, but the pool for sacreds, someone will probably do it in the comments, is slightly smaller because there's some champions you cannot summon from sacred shards that you can from ancients, such as Sylve the Drakes. But broadly speaking, it is still the same. The main difference is going to be that, your chance of actually getting the specific champion out when you do hit legendary is still the same, but you need to pull fewer sacred shards to get legendaries compared to ancient shards, because your chance of summoning a legendary from a sacred is proportionately higher. But in terms of once that legendary pops out, your chance of it actually being the one you want is still almost identical. Probably slightly better because there's fewer in there, but almost identical. For all practical purposes, it is effectively identical. Now for voids is quite different. Voids is interesting because we've got far fewer void legendaries. So this is, let's say, ancients and almost sacreds. Okay, so that's clear-ish. If we go into voids and we do the exact same thing, for voids, so there are I believe there's actually 41 void legendaries. I calculated this myself. I counted them up. Of course, I could have miscounted by 1 or 2. It's certainly possible. But I believe there's 41, but there's 5 that are excluded from being summoned. Like Lydia is excluded, Eurost, Romantu, I don't know. There's others in there as well, Mithrala and Ginro. So I think the others aren't void legendaries. So there's 5 that are excluded. So there's 36. There's 36 potential that you could summon. So I believe that works out that if we want 1, it'd be 1 in 36 chance, which is, I believe that would come out to, if we're, yeah, it would come out, oops, hang on, over here. You'd have a 2.8% chance. When you hit legendary from a void in a non-10 times event, you would be, let's say just, again, 36, straightforward, no 10 times event, just normally hitting a void legendary. When that legendary pops out, you got a 2.8% chance with the current number of void legendaries that it's going to be any given void legendary, right? Now, when we up that to a 10 times event, we start adding on quite a lot more. We add on quite a lot more. So for your typical 10 times event, we would have obviously 36. Then we'd add 9 additional copies. We'd have 45 then potential. Again, if you imagine a deck of cards, you'd have 45 cards in the deck, 10 of which would be the 10 times champion, which brings you up to, drumroll, a 22% chance to get a champion in a normal Voids 10x. That is, when you hit legendary, there's a 22% chance that it's the one that is boosted by the 10 times, and there's whatever, a 78% chance that it is a different legendary. Now, for this specific 10 times that's going to be coming up on Sunday, where we've got 3 voids in there, this is where it certainly gets spicier. So we'd have, again, 36 potential legendaries, but we're going to increase it. We'd have, what, 27? 36. I'm always nervous about doing maths on stream, so I use the calculator. I used to be good at maths. No longer. It's been almost half a lifetime since I've really properly done any. So you'd have now 63 potentials in the pool. Of course, 30 of which are going to be the 10 times boosted, which comes out at actually a reasonable enough chance, I'd say, of 47.6. So basically what I'm saying is that with the Void Shards, if you were to pull during this triple, and they very, very rarely do this, right? Very rarely, but you've got 3 of these Void Legendaries who are all really good, boosted in this 10 times summon. If you hit Legendary with a Void pull, during this 10 times event, there's a 47% chance that you would pull one of these 3. One of those 3 is what you would get. That is your chance. 53% of the time, or whatever, you would not get them. You get one of the other ones, right? But again, my advice for this remains pretty much the same. With Voids, even more so, because your chances are much better, actually, with Voids. So again, with Voids, though, the advice is still the same, which is, really, it's mostly if you're in your Mercy system, right? If you've gone 200 pulls without a Void, and you've been tracking that, and you know you can hit your Mercy, you can, again, you increase your chance per shard, so you can guarantee within, like, I mean, maybe guarantee within 20 or 30 shards that you can eventually reach that 100% chance to hit a legendary. You can say, I will definitely pull a legendary. What are my chances? Okay, I've got a 47% chance now that I will pull one of those 3 game-changing Void Legendaries. Then that does become worth it. You know, otherwise it becomes very, very unlikely, right? Because you're going to have a 1 in 200, 1 in 200 chance, which is 0.5%, to actually pull it. So, for example, if we'd have like 47.6% multiplied by, oh, sorry, let me put in percent, multiplied by 0.5%. So I believe this is right. Live maths is always bad. So you have per Void Shard, I believe, you would have, if you know you're not guaranteed to pull, so you've got your 1 in 200, I think you'd have a 0.0024% chance per Void Shard. I believe that's correct. No, I don't know. That's probably not correct, actually, is it? I don't know. I haven't worked it out. Someone could work it out, but it's pretty unlikely anyway. Live maths is always a bad idea. That's why I prepare this stuff in advance, so I can actually think about it for a bit and hopefully get it correct. But there you go, guys. This is effectively what we're... I guess it would be... yeah, no, it's super unlikely. Maybe that is correct. I don't know. Anyway, look, there you go, guys. That is a brief discussion about your chances from these shards. This is how stuff looks. In let me actually clarify this even more just to make it clear for people who skip to the end. So we've got 10x, no, 10x, and we've got 3 champ 10x. That makes it more clear. Here we've got, let me actually, you know what? Let me actually flip these. No, actually that one's fine there. Let me flip these. Here we go. So if we take this, we cut. Okay, and let's cut, put that over there. Yeah, that makes it actually kind of better. Let's take all of this and center it. Okay, put it like this. I think that makes it clear. Ancients and for mostly sacreds, when there's... Wait, I didn't successfully do that. There we go. When there's no 10x on, you've got a 0.8% chance to hit a specific legendary champion. When there is a 10x, that increases not by 10, not like 10 times as likely, slightly less than that. Goes up to a 7.6% chance. With the current stuff we have on right now, with the 3 champ 10x from your ancients, and it's slightly better odds from sacreds, but only like to a tiny margin, you're going to have a 20.10% chance to hit the 10x champions. If you hit a legendary, 6.7% chance to hit a specific legendary during this 3 champ 10x. Again, that's of the times that you pull a legendary, 6.7% will be the specific one you want if there's 3 champs in the 10x. For voids, when there's no 10x, 2.8% chance to get any specific legendary. If one of them is boosted in 10 times, it goes up to a 22%. Again, it's not 10 times as likely, which would be 28%. It's not as good as that. This is how 10 times works. It goes up to 22%. And then with the 3 champs 10x, it would go to this. And let me put this in as... over here. Let's make this clear as well. So this would be a 20x, right? In a 20x, you'd have 14%, which is still very much a gamble. So there you go, guys. That is the info. Again, if I got some of the maths wrong, which is certainly possible, you can let me know in the comments. There are certainly smarter people than me that actually do maths, you know, so they could let us know. Yeah, I think still this should hopefully give you a decent insight into what's going on. And yeah, there you go. So set your expectations at that reasonable level. And again, for me, my main takeaway, as always, for these 10 times events, even if they upped it to a 20 times event, I think for the user at the end, it's, you know, it is still a good chance to get a specific legendary, but it's still extremely a gamble. It's very gambly. One of the big ways, I always say, be tracking your mercy system, because you can guarantee a legendary, so you cut out the chance per shard as being a factor. You can really limit that down if you've tracked your mercy system. And when you can eliminate the chance per shard, you can then make your decision of, do I pull shards based purely off the chance of if you hit legendary, right? You eliminate the if you hit legendary question, and then you go, okay, now what is my chance of a specific legendary? And that's when it becomes more reasonable. Still a huge gamble, but more reasonable. And again, this is why for me, I generally focus more on things like summon rush rewards and guaranteed champion events, where it is, again, much more guaranteed. You know exactly what you're going to get. The gamble is not there as much. So guys, thanks for watching. Hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.